everyone. I'm Kasie Hunt. Welcome to The Arena. It's great to have you with us on this Wednesday. Right now, a shock and a warning for the Democratic establishment following yet another win for the far left.
We went up against a political establishment, against millions of dollars out-of-state spending. We were outspent 16-1 and we won.
Democratic socialist Angie Nixon last night easily defeating the more moderate Alexander Vindman. Emphasis on easily. It wasn't even close. Nixon is on track to win by about 12 points. This despite the fact that Vindman was the choice of the party's establishment. They seem to view him as a rising star. He's an Army veteran, and he was a key witness during Donald Trump's first impeachment trial. Vindman raised and spent significantly more money than Nixon.
Stakes couldn't be higher. In this election, the future of the country, the state hang in the balance. We came up short. But we have Angie Nixon, and we can congratulate her on her win and be able to take this forward, take this battle forward to win in November.
The results in Florida showing yet again where the energy is right now in the Democratic Party. Nixon's platform includes Medicare for all, a national rent freeze, and ending military support to Israel. Of course, those very policies and Florida's red-leaning electorate make it highly unlikely that Nixon will win in the general election. But her primary victory, it carries a message for the Democratic establishment, especially here in Washington. Watch out, because the energy, these policies, these candidates who are running on them, well, they seem to be coming for you.
Told us to get in line, but we knew better. They tried to intimidate us. They told us to step aside, but we knew better. And we, the hard-working, everyday people of Florida, sent a shockwave to the Washington, D.C. establishment. And they better get ready. Because they ain't seen nothing yet.
All right, let's get off the sidelines, head into the arena. My panel is here. Senior politics reporter at Axios, Mark Caputo. CNN political analyst, national political correspondent for Axios, Alex Thompson. CNN political commentator, former Biden White House communications director, Kate Bedingfield. And former Republican congressman and governor of South Carolina, Mark Sanford. We are also joined by CNN political commentator, Bakari Sellers. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. Mark Caputo, you are our resident Florida man. No pun intended, or something.
Pun taken.
So I want to start with you just because I'd be interested to hear the texture you would add to this. I mean, obviously, it's a piece of the puzzle in the national narrative on this debate between inside the Democratic Party. What actually happened in Florida?
Well, I think there's a narrative in search of facts to a degree. What happened in Florida was well summed up by Vindman's speech that was just featured there, which was terrible. He's a terrible candidate. He ran a terrible campaign. And terrible candidates who run terrible campaigns usually lose elections. And that's what happened here. And Angie Nixon, a state rep who I covered a bit in Tallahassee, is clearly a card-carrying progressive. She's not as much of a card-carrying Democratic socialist. At a certain point in June, she decided to sign up. And if you read some of the coverage at the time, that was more particularized. She had decided to do this because she's a progressive. They're essentially fellow travelers. This morning on another interview on another network, she had ticked off the things where she disagrees with the Democratic Socialists on. So she's sort of a quasi-accidental, opportunistic Democratic Socialist is what she is. So she now is going to have to...
In the context of a primary, but not necessarily, you're saying,
right,
in the context of the election she's about to run.
Correct. Well, in the context of the election that she's about to run, she's going to have to decide sort of what lane she's going to be in. She hates being defined and labeled, she said, but guess what happens when you join a group? You get labeled. And the socialist label in a general election, especially in Florida, can be problematic, especially with the complex and cultured history of the Hispanic voting.
Yeah, when you talk to Cubans in
population.
Miami, socialism has a very distinct meaning.
And it's not just
and Venezuelans
and
also.
it's Cubans, it's those of Cuban descent, Venezuelan descent, Colombian descent, and Nicaraguan descent. Different communities that fled socialism, communism, or the threat of leftism under different sort of political circumstances. Socialism to them sounds like the way you would say National Socialism, except in German. Same with a number of pro-Israel voters. They hear Democratic Socialist, they think Nazi.
To add really quickly to that, like the last CBS YouGov poll over this weekend, the group of Americans with the lowest approval of socialism in the country, Latinos, at 30%.
Yeah. Kate Bedingfield, what would you say about this race? And I mean, I take Mark's assessment. I mean, you can see it in the way those clips lined up, okay? But it's true that Democrats in Washington helped recruit Vindman for this race. He has a national profile, which is increasingly important and attention grabbing. But she seemed to, I mean, she was driving all over the state with her cell phone. She live streamed changing a tire at one point, right? She was able to capture attention in a different way.
Yeah, she was. And she very, give her all credit. She very clearly hustled. She also, I think, did a good job really making the race, localized. I mean, she was also very aggressive in taking it to Ron DeSantis around redistricting. And I think while Vindman was sort of coasting a little bit on his national kind of anti-Trump celebrity, she really hustled. So to me, one of the lessons here, and this is true from time immemorial, but one of the lessons for incumbents here is complacency will kill you. Not that he was an incumbent, but for, shall we say, establishment figures, complacency will kill you. She certainly proved that. And I was talking to Steve Shale last night, an old friend of mine who is a longtime Democratic operative, knows Florida very, very well, and he was pointing out, the Vindman has $8 million left in the bank. I mean, this was not a campaign that, frankly, ran hard enough or that ran effectively enough and ran efficiently enough. And so I do think you have to take, not take anything away from Angie Nixon. I think you do have to take that into account as well.
Yeah. Governor, what would you add?
I'd add two things. I think one, it's a reminder of how all politics are local.
Yep.
That people, I mean, I think there's an interesting juxtaposition between that race and the fact that they also, on the Democratic side, elected David Jolly to represent them. I mean, he's very much a centrist candidate, very opposite of some of the echo of what we're hearing. But it's a reminder that politics is local, a reminder that candidate quality absolutely always matters. But it also is a reminder how people, it was interesting what you said a moment ago, the hardworking people of Florida think. There's real unrest in the working class of America on both sides, Republican and Democrat, and people are pissed off in the way the system is not working for them, and there's rebellion against it on both right and left.
Yeah, Bakari Sellers, I mean, when you watched the way Angie Nixon was campaigning there, you could hear the passion, and in many ways, what the governor was just addressing there. Being willing to fight seems to be the primary criteria for Democratic voters these days. She clearly also had black support in Florida, which you could also see there. How would you look at the results out of Florida and apply them going forward?
So first of all, let me just say this is going to be a weird moment for me agreeing with both Mark Caputo and Mark Sanford. I took pride in trying to override every veto that Mark Sanford put before us in the legislature. But I have to throw some cold water on your premise here, Kasie. I mean, the simple fact is this isn't Florida's not some display that DSA is on the rise. The fact is we sent Debbie Wasserman Schultz back to Congress, Jared Moskowitz back to Congress, elected David Jolly. You saw a poor candidate lose a race because he ran poorly. This isn't some referendum on the far left or this left versus establishment narrative that people want to talk about. And I'm also just going to have a blunt message for Democrats. We won't be wasting money in Florida now. We were going to be spending tons of money on a Senate seat that we were not going to win in Vindman instead of spending money in North Carolina and Ohio and maybe even Iowa, Senate seats we can win. And now you're going to see that money not go to Florida. It's going to go to the places that are necessary, that we have a fighting chance, that we have an ability to win. And so the map has a funny way of realigning itself on primary night. And that's what happened last night.
I wanted to add something, just some particulars about Vindman. He spent $9 million. $2 million of that was on TV. To Bakari's point of how expensive Florida is, it's 10 TV markets. It costs $3 million a week to run a saturation ad campaign where your average TV watcher sees a commercial 10 times. And that's a lot of money. He only spent $2 million. So though people think Vindman is some sort of national figure, no one knew who he was in Florida.
Yeah. Big picture, Kate Bedingfield. I mean, when you look at the way things are playing out for Democrats heading into these midterm elections, the sort of big picture question I have is where the party is currently thinking it's going to land and what that means in terms of the takeaways. Because while we may be setting up for a major blue wave or even a blue tsunami, that can sometimes paper over actual issues that are going on. It's not like the Democratic Party's brand is popular at the moment.
It's true. That is true, unfortunately. A true statement. No, look, I think the big questions to look at in terms of where the party lands, how can the Democrats and what kind of Democratic candidates can make inroads again with non-college educated voters? Where are black voters lining up? Black voters are the heart and soul of the Democratic Party. They are the base of the Democratic Party. And questions about which kind of candidates are winning support from black voters will tell you a lot about where the party is potentially going to go in 2028 and what kind of candidate is going to be successful in 2028. I agree with Bakari. I don't think that anything that happened in Florida last night is a referendum on kind of where the party stands right now. I think, as he noted, if you look at look at Debbie Wasserman Schultz, you look at Jared Moskowitz. I mean, these are candidates who, there was a lot of energy on the far progressive left to try to defeat them in primaries, and they won overwhelmingly. So, the idea that Florida suggests that the progressive left is ascendant, I'm not sure that's so true, just based on the facts. But I think if you're trying to look at where the Democratic Party is going to net out, and you look at the primary calendar across the course of the 2028 contest, and you look at what kinds of voters are going to be central. Who can make inroads with non-college voters? Who can win black voters? And that's going to tell you a lot about who will be the Democratic nominee in 2028.
I think it's also very clear that the Democratic Party primary voters have shifted since 8 years ago, where just being the chief Trump antagonist is no longer sufficient.
Yeah, certainly. I agree with that.
You need a second argument.
Yeah. I certainly agree with that.
So Congressman Moskowitz had this to say to Playbook after he, of course, won his election. He said, quote, "Democrats shouldn't play hide the Hassan Piker now," Moskowitz said. For all those people who thought it was a great idea to campaign with him, as JC once said, bring him out, they shouldn't be hiding him now. Mark?
Oh, well, that's just a very Moskowitz type of phrase. He's always been very good with that. He took... You have to understand about one thing about Jared Moskowitz. His father, Mike Moskowitz, was one of the OG financiers of Florida's Democratic Party back in the day, where there was no question about support for Israel. Big AIPAC guy. And Moskowitz is now the face of that sort of older Democratic Party that's looking at the ascendant Angie Nixons, who called Netanyahu a war criminal, and wonder what's happening to their party. This tension is going to be playing out for quite some time.
Yeah. Governor, on one other note, the Trump-backed candidate in the governor's race in Florida, Byron Donalds, didn't crack 50% of the vote. Do you take anything away from that in terms of the power of Trump's endorsement or not? Because, there's been this big question in many cases there were Republicans that they couldn't win with Trump. They certainly couldn't win without him. But if there was a primary and they were going up against a Trump-backed candidate, it was very hard to overcome. This result's a little bit mixed.
Yeah, I don't think there's a particular takeaway there. I mean, you have a multi-candidate field. It's tough to get past 50%, period. But I do think there's serious erosion as to what the Trump endorsement means. His numbers now, I think he's at about 10 losses. He's rivaling where he was in 22. And so I think you're seeing real erosion there. I think it's going to be a more sustained and pronounced erosion.
Yeah. All right. Bakari Sellers and our panel all going to stand by. Coming up next here in the arena.